This is Steve. It's 7 a.m., and Steve's alarm has just gone off for the third time. In a moment, he'll do what millions of people do every morning: groan, fumble for his phone, and start his day. Steve isn't famous. He isn't rich. He is gloriously, perfectly average. And yet, the small, sleepy decisions Steve is about to make, what he eats, what he skips, what he quietly stops buying, are one tiny link in an invisible chain reaction that is moving billions of dollars around the entire planet. To understand one of the strangest economic shifts of our time, we have to start right here, in Steve's bedroom. Because a few months ago, Steve started taking a tiny weekly injection. Not because he was sick, not even because he was really overweight, but because, like almost everyone, he'd quietly absorbed a constant low background fear of his own body. The drug does something that sounds almost too simple. It copies a hormone your gut releases after a meal, the one that tells your brain, okay, that's enough. Except now, that signal barely switches off. The hunger just fades. On these medications, the average person eats around 21% fewer calories. Steve hardly notices. He just feels full, sooner, all the time. But take one quieter appetite and multiply it by tens of millions of people, and something extraordinary starts to happen out there in the economy.
And it begins in the most boring place imaginable, a grocery cart. Steve's phone buzzes. Time to reorder food. But lately, his orders keep shrinking. And Steve is not alone. When researchers at Cornell tracked households after they started these drugs, grocery spending dropped more than 5% within 6 months. For wealthier homes, over 8%. That's roughly $390 a year per family, simply evaporating from the food budget. And it doesn't shrink evenly. Snacks, sweets, and soda, down about 10%. Fast food and takeout, down around 8%. But fruit, yogurt, and protein actually went up. Steve's cart didn't just get smaller, it changed shape. Now imagine that exact change quietly happening inside millions of carts at the very same time. If you sell food for a living, this is a slow-motion nightmare. For a century, the whole industry ran on one quiet rule: get people to eat just a little bit more. And now, for the first time ever, customers are choosing to eat less on purpose. So the giants are scrambling. Nestle just launched its first brand new food line in nearly 30 years, built specifically for people on these drugs. General Mills and Dannon are racing out high-protein, keeps-you-full products. The very companies that spent decades engineering food to be impossible to resist are now selling the opposite. And JPMorgan estimates this single shift could wipe out $30 to $55 billion in food and drink sales by 2030. And here's where it gets genuinely strange. Because when an entire population eats a little less, the ripples reach places that have nothing to do with food at all. Take airplanes. A lighter passenger means a lighter plane. A lighter plane burns less fuel. One analysis estimated that as travelers slim down, America's 4 biggest airlines could save around $580 million a year just in jet fuel. Sit with that for a second. A weight loss drug quietly showing up on an airline's fuel bill. And that same invisible logic is beginning to touch restaurants, snack makers, even alcohol sales. One appetite turned down, multiplied by millions, spreading outward like rings on a palm. So if
billions of dollars are draining out of food? Where is it all going? Follow the money, and it leads straight to the drug makers. Eli Lilly just became the first pharmaceutical company in history to be worth $1 trillion, with sales expected to climb past $80 billion next year. But it's a tale of two giants. Novo Nordisk, the maker of Ozempic itself, and until recently the most valuable company in all of Europe, just warned that its sales could actually fall next year as rivals pile in and prices start to slide. One tower rising, one beginning to wobble. And the entire obesity drug market could blow past $120 billion by 2030. Even though today, only 1 or 2% of the people who could take these drugs actually do. This race has barely begun.
But all of this is balanced on one uncomfortable question. Who is actually paying? Because these drugs are not cheap. The sticker price runs around $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. So the bill gets quietly fought over by 4 people: you, your employer, your insurer, and the government, each trying very hard not to be the one left holding it. In 2026, Medicare begins covering some patients for a $50 copay, which sounds wonderful until you remember that covered really just means the cost gets spread across everyone's taxes and premiums. But here's the twist. Prices are already starting to fall. The first pill version arrived at around $150 a month, and cheaper drugs mean more users, which means these ripples are about to get much, much bigger. Which brings us all the way back to Steve. Is this a real, permanent new world, or just an enormous bubble waiting to pop? Because here's the part almost nobody mentions. In that same Cornell data, about 1 in 3 people stopped taking the drugs, and the moment they did, their old spending came right back. These medications are expensive. They're often a lifelong commitment, and we still don't fully understand what it means to switch off something as ancient and basic as human hunger. So maybe this reshapes the economy for good. Or maybe when the hype fades, the ripples fade with it, and the world just quietly goes back to eating. Nobody actually knows yet. And that, strangely, is one of the biggest economic questions of the entire decade. As for Steve, he just finished his coffee. He has absolutely no idea he's sitting at the center of all of it. So, real shift or giant bubble? Tell us what you think in the comments. This is Dollars Decoded. We'll see you in the next one.